Okay. Well, welcome everyone for another beautiful webinar episode. We have Paul Moller today, one of our, the inventor of the Sky Car. It's a phenomenal, amazing man, inventor, engineer, scientist who, one of the first, Sky Car ever, and he's done a lot more. We also, of course, David Adair. We're having problems with his audio and video, but we have him on audio. So he joins us as well. So I really want to thank everyone for coming on board and supporting us. And we're really excited about this. David and I are really big fans of Paul. And Paul's really into the UFO community and the UFO stuff. He actually published a paper in around 1975, 73, 75, which will probably make that available in the near future on the website. So welcome, Paul, and welcome, David. Let's put them on the screen there, Darcy. Let's see. There we go. There's Paul. And David, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you through
through the phone. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, Dave, I have Paul Moller here.
There we go.
David's pretty low voice.
Oh, here, let me turn it up here. And let's put it right over here. Say something, David, so he can hear you.
Hi, Paul. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, Dave and I were talking last week when we met you guys through a common colleague and friend. That we got really excited because, we've been following you on Popular Mechanics since the late 60s and early 70s. So we're really excited to have you on the show here. And I really appreciate you sending us the updated information so we can speak the lingo. It really helped David and I understand the dynamics of what's really going on out there. All three of us are pilots here, and I didn't know there was so much behind the scenes, which I would like you to start discussing some of those roadblocks that you've been having, involving, sorry if I do get the lingo wrong with the air cars and that business. And if you want to share with everybody, some of those trials.
Yeah, the term that's now pretty much common in discussing these vehicles is air taxis.
Air taxis.
Yeah, it's something that's probably only about 6 months to a year old, but it seems to be in the public domain pretty generally, describing something that could be, say, 5 to 6 passengers in a dedicated route type of application, airport to hotel, something like that. And,
right.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a reasonable sized market, but it's not going to be a big market. And what surprises me is to see that all of the major startups and the legacy companies are all concentrating on this 5 to 7 passenger vehicle, which, quite frankly, is not going to be a major player in this Morgan Stanley projected market of $9 to $19 trillion by 2050, or $1.5 trillion by 2040, and 150 billion by 2030. It's just not going to be a major player, but that's where all the money's going. And you're talking about vehicles that are going to cost billions of dollars each to get past the FAA. And my argument is that almost 80% of vehicles going down the highway right now are one passenger, another 7.5% are two passengers, and ride sharing is more like a declining 9.5. So
but Paul, you couldn't really ride share with this, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense to make a stop because all that energy is lost every stop you make.
It absolutely doesn't make sense, because think about it. You have to get in your Uber car, get driven across the city, and there won't be a lot. There won't be a lot of them because these skyports to be able to have a few of these vehicles available are going to be large. They're not going to be all over a city, and so you're going to get an Uber car drive for half an hour, 15 minutes, depending on the distance. Get into
you're telling me, Paul, you're telling me, Paul, these skyports are kind of like a train station. Then there's specific areas, and that they would go to get in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Dedicated routes.
And so
that doesn't work for rideshare.
Kind of like, talking about, is that all going to be automated? The AI, is that going to be, because it's not 3D like we have roads and make a right, left turn, because it's all A to B. It's a linear system. Is that a controlled, like who's in control of that? The airways.
Well, controlling the airways, quite frankly, is a very modest undertaking. We already accept the fact that by 2030, cars are going to be automated in a world that's much more complex. So there's no consideration of an airway system. We have all kinds of electronics. Mm-hmm. Commercial airliners today are being pretty much automatically flown and automatically landed in most cases, which most passengers don't know. So that's not an issue. The issue really is nothing that carries a significant number of people is going to have any value except for dedicated routes, ride sharing, which is not practical. Getting to the skyport, getting from the skyport. The skyport flight may only take 10 minutes, but the other half's going to take half an hour, an hour. So
right.
We haven't done anything that's going to change your world, our transportation world, our individual ability to get around in something as convenient or more convenient than the automobile.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit about, I know there's multiple vehicles and corporations out there, as you stated in your white paper you sent David and I. Of course, you have the best vehicle set up for that. Tell us a little bit about the competition and how it compares to your car.
Well, the big issue comes down to something very fundamental. When you take off vertically, the power requirements are enormous. And then when you get cruising, they may drop to 10%. So you have this need for a huge amount of power for a short period of time. Batteries can do that. They're like supercapacitors. You can suck out this power very, very quickly. And that's what's important for taking off vertically. But when you get into cruise, you get into a need for energy. And batteries have a very low energy per pound. So that's where you get into the issue with batteries. On the other side of the ledger, you say, well, why not engines? Well, engines are great from one point of view. The fuel has 50 times the power per pound versus batteries. 50 times the energy per pound versus batteries. But the lightest engine in the world produces less than 1 horsepower per pound. When I say the lightest engine, I'm not including my engine, but the lightest existing 4-stroke piston engine, which is the standard, produce less than 1 horsepower per pound. So engines alone don't work, not the present engines. So many, many years ago, I hate to admit how long ago, I became aware of a rotary engine that was developed in Germany called the Wankel rotary engine, developed by Dr. Felix Wankel. And I bought a bunch of them back in the 60s. They were crude. They were very early on. But even as crude and early as they were, they still produced more power than the best 4-stroke piston engine. And most importantly, they produced a huge amount of power per volume, which is not recognized as so critical, but it is terribly critical in the use of distributed propulsion, which I invented in 1971. As you may know, all of these air taxis today are using distributed propulsion. And distributed propulsion has certain requirements. The engines have to be very small, and they have to be, of course, very powerful. And that was that movement to distributed propulsion really opened up this whole field of battery-powered uh, air taxis.
Mm-hmm.
They look great. They have tremendous promise according to the advertisements, but none of the vehicles in the world being developed today, and that includes 200 different companies, have a vehicle that can fly even 50 miles. And I say 50 miles with people on board. Of course, they're advertising they can go 100 miles, maybe even in some cases 150. But I assure you, they don't have any payload in place. They probably exhaust the battery to zero because they're not piloted. Therefore, if they crash, it's not going to kill anybody. All the things necessary to make them sound like they can go very far. But nobody has demonstrated an air taxi that can fly over 50 miles fully loaded with people and the payload that goes with them.
Yeah, I was talking to David about that, and I saw your ratios with the power. I just can't see, Paul, how, I'm not getting in a battery operated air taxi. I mean, just because I don't care how safe the battery is, it just doesn't make sense. And, all the stuff I've read about all the air taxis that are battery operated, let's just face it, you do one run and then you got to sit there and charge it for a couple hours. I mean, it's just so prohibitive. Why are they even utilizing
elements, right? You're right from a practical element. Recharging, how is this going to work in the commercial world where you fly for 10 minutes and you have to recharge for half an hour? It's obviously not practical. These battery-powered aircraft, this is probably the most interesting thing of all that. These battery-powered aircraft can only hover for 5 minutes and their batteries are zero. So they got to get up and they really got to get moving quick because while they're hovering, that battery is going down the tubes. And of course, any battery that's drawn down quickly is fire prone. And we know that we've had hundreds of, now thousands of battery fires with lithium batteries. That's not an option in an airplane where you can't climb out if you have a fire. And even if you have a parachute, that's no good because that's going to burn up before you ever get to the ground.
We're talking about that too. I was telling David. David said, David, are you there? David was talking about, well, they better have a separate battery just for the parachute. And I said, not only that, they better be using, steel cables for that parachute and some other flame retardant, part of the chute there, because once you're coming down as a fireball, I mean, what are you going to do? Like you said, there's no place to go. You're sitting on the battery.
Yeah, and you cannot put a fire extinguisher system in place they'll turn off a lithium fire. You can see that from these fires all over the world. There's a big article that came out recently. These air cars are crashing and burning all over the place. And we don't hear about a lot of that because it's kept quietly, certainly by the people that are involved in it. But it is a fact that lithium batteries are certainly a fire hazard in their present chemistry. That may change. State batteries are promised. There may be other options. But for the moment, I don't think I'd ever get in a lithium-powered sky car.
No. Right. No, I agree with you. And now with your Sky car, your latest edition there, and you guys can go check out his website. Which website do you want everyone to check out there?
Well, Freedom Motors, we're concentrating on that because if you think about it, engines are the key to everything we're doing. And so we're certainly, the engines are going to be built for, Moller cannot put together the huge equipment needed to build these engines, which Freedom possesses. So Freedom is going to be building the engines for Moller and build engines for many other applications. Because if you have an engine that you can hold in one hand that produces, if you're a little strong in one hand, you can hold an engine that produces 150 horsepower.
Right.
And an engine that produces 8 or 9 horsepower that's the size of a grapefruit. And that really is the merits of our engine as it exists at this time.
And what's the materials of your composites of the body? I know you were using fiberglass. Have you switched over to the new lightweight tech?
Yeah, our original aircraft were in fiberglass and weighed probably 200 to 300 pounds. I'm talking about the 4-passenger Skycar 400, 300 or 400 pounds more because of that. We build everything now in carbon fiber and Kevlar in certain components, places that require flexibility, because Kevlar is extremely strong and flexible. Carbon fiber is not. And so it's really a combination. But that gets our airframe on our single passenger Skycar 100 down to 175 pounds. That is the aircraft airframe with undercarriage, not including engines. But
that's amazing.
But the airframe, it's amazing what you can do. Of course, the aircraft, the single passenger aircraft, is only 13 feet long, and with folded wings is only 10 feet wide.
Right. What was that, David?
I weigh more than the Sky Car.
David said he weighs more than your Sky Car.
Well, we can build it carrying up to significant weights with some penalty in range, but still the range is in the area of 400 pounds. So we can give up a 100-mile range and carry a 300-pound person or more.
Wow. What about, so your engines? Oh, go ahead, David. What was your question, David?
I'm starting Golo.
Yeah, he said he's glad he started Golo, his new diet. Yeah, we all have to be ready for that, David, for the future here, because these cars aren't going to be able to lift us. The thing, David, Paul, what your engines, correct me if I'm wrong here, are you using titanium and magnesium? Like how are you cutting weight in there?
Well, the rotary engine is fundamentally very light and very small. The application version involves some fairly complex rotor cooling, where the rotor is cooled by oil. This adds pump and a lot of other components. We work with a technology that started out in the area of recreational vehicles, where weight is really critical. Engine developed by Fichtelsachs in Germany and OMC in the United States, which cools the rotor with the incoming charge of air. And then we do some very significant patent elements that I don't openly discuss that allow us to get to 3 horsepower per pound. Well, actually more than that, without titanium and without magnesium.
Wow.
We can get to 4 horsepower per pound, we believe, if we were to use magnesium for some components. We can never use that for the trochoid, which is the surface of which the rotors run, because heat transfer is so critical and weight is critical. But for the side housings, we can go to magnesium. For the crankshaft and the rotor, we can go to titanium. And that'll get us to 4 horsepower per pound or more. But we're good at 3 right now. It's just extra payload. That's maybe worth looking for. Titanium is going to raise cost. Magnesium is going to raise cost. And so it's a trade-off.
Right. No, I see that. Yeah. Also, when I was speaking with Dave the other day, what about the sound? I mean, you have probably the quietest, air taxi out there because it's enclosed. And I was reading some of your papers on it. I can't see how all those other ones that are, exposed to the air. I mean, it must be pretty loud, those other air taxis.
Well, it depends. The Joby, which is built by Joby Aviation, coincidentally was an employee of mine for 2 years, a bright person and developing a very sophisticated design. It is quiet because he purposely made the rotor speeds low. As a result, the rotors are large, and it makes the control system extremely complex. So he has you could almost say his aircraft is like 6 helicopters glued together. So it becomes this whole idea of distributed propulsion, where you take your propulsion system and break it up into a whole bunch of components, is great if you don't have to have variable pitch and a whole bunch of other things, or you're back to a very complex, even more complex vehicle than the helicopter. And that's really our design. We use a large number of fans. They're inducted fans because that retains the noise. It allows us to treat the noise with, sound absorbing material. It also allows us to use what's called mutual noise cancellation technology, where you provide a frequency 180 degrees out of phase with the existing noise. You can do that with ducted fans, but you cannot do that with open propellers because the frequency range is so huge in open propellers that you simply can't attack all the frequencies. But in a ducted fan, the frequencies tend to be in a narrow band and lend themselves to mutual noise cancellation. So we're using that.
Fascinating. Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, you got to worry about the noise of the engine. And we have developed an engine called a 5-stroke rotary engine. And the beauty of this is you have an additional expansion stroke. So if you think about it, why do you get noise from an engine? You get it because when the exhaust valve opens, out comes this pulse at sonic speed. And needless to say, that generates a lot of noise. With a 5th stroke, we actually go through an additional expansion stroke. So the combustion leaves the engine at a expanded state and the noise is dropped by 95%. And so that turns out to be a critical requirement too. So ducted fans with all the technology that goes with it and our engines mean that we have the potential to get down to 80 dBA within the required city requirements. And the Joby, I give them great credit. The Joby J4 seems to meet that noise limit, and it's the only one that does it. We think we will for different reasons, but we haven't proven that yet.
What other regulatory besides noise and what classification is the air taxis fall under for the FAA, and are they going to have a separate division for that, you think?
That's a really good question because it brings up a very complex answer. The 5 to 7 passengers that are now being or developed require certification under Part 21, FAA Part 21. No aircraft has ever been certified under Part 21. The one that has attempted to be certified is the BA 609, or now called the W 609. It's a commercial version of the military XV-15 on which the Osprey was built.
Right. I know you're talking about,
That aircraft, the one BA 609, WA 609, has now cost over $6 billion, has taken 20 years, and is still not certified. It's going to be certified next year, but we have also heard that for the last 10 years. This is what these people with these 5 to 7 passenger aircraft are trying to do. They're going to a field that's never had a certification, and the only one that's ever occurred is now taken over 20 years and still ongoing. And by the way, it's developed by legacy companies, Bell Aircraft, Westland, which was previously, and Augusta. These are top helicopter companies that know what they're doing, and they're still out there trying to get one aircraft certified. I think that these poor people who are spending billions of dollars are going to find that they're going to all be retiring before their vehicle gets to the air.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, to answer your question, which is an extremely good question, is
Thank
one,
you.
2 passenger aircraft, as distinct from 5 to 7, can be FAA certified under Part. Well, it is not in paper yet, but the FAA is agreed that something like this is going to happen. Will be not certified exactly. They'll be approved under Part 103, and now you have a tremendous simplification. Rather than cost billions of dollars per vehicle to develop, you're talking about $100 million. But $100 million is in today's world is very manageable.
Yes, right. No, that makes sense.
And you won't have to have a pilot's license. You'll have a pilot certificate, and even less than that, because they'll be automated. They'll be autonomous. You're going to get in this one passenger aircraft that lands right outside your house, take where you need to go, be dropped off, and that vehicle is going to be working, if necessary, 24 hours a day. It has to refuel, but the refueling takes 5 minutes, not an hour.
Yeah,
right. And people argue, well, electric vehicles are pollution free. That's not true. That electricity was generated somewhere, so it's just as bad as anything else. maybe
It's still gas, coal, and oil charging that car. So.
exactly. Whereas we use sustainable methanol, which is carbon neutral, or we can use hydrogen or ammonia, which are carbon free. So we have this option, but certainly we're going to use methanol. Our engine was designed to run methanol. It's the perfect fuel. It's got all kinds of tremendous advantages over gasoline, fire, you name it. It's you can dump a load of it on the highway and it'll all evaporate without any consequences to anybody nearby.
No, no, great answer. Yeah, I was very. I was going to see how would that work out because they're totally different aircraft. And what about you mentioned David. If you're there, David, I know you're on speaker here with us. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about the he mentioned Bell and Augusta and all these other conglomerates, these amazing corporations. And if you want to spread some light on some intel you got from Bell.
I think I can.
Can you guys hear him?
Barely.
Yeah, speak into maybe you're on speakerphone, Dave. You might have to get your headset on and talk into the thing there.
Is that better?
Oh, yes. Can you hear him now, Paul?
Okay.
Yes, I think it's better.
Yeah. Okay. What is really is going to happen is that the Wright brothers would have never flown the Wright Flyer if they knew how much a 747 costs today. They would look at that and go, "Are you insane? There's no way we can afford something like that." And that's going to have a lot to do with the technology coming up. There's new technologies on the frontier and what you're going to have, especially for this particular thing, you're going to have different elements on the atomic code. You're going to have things we haven't even discovered yet. And that is feasible. You might say, well, that sounds like science fiction. Well, God almighty, look at our work today. What would they have said 100 years ago if they just looked at things running around on the earth today? They go, that's science fiction. Well, we can get there, but we're going to, the air taxi represents a really hard challenge for our present day state-of-the-art materials and resources for fuel. But let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about, what I see coming in the future, near future. It's very true. You got a weight problem with your sky taxis. But there'll be a day where you'll be able to walk out and pick up a sky taxi, put it on your shoulder, and walk away with it. It'll be so light. That's because the type of manufacturing I'm talking about is manufacturing materials out in the weightless environment in space manufacturing. If you bring space manufacturing in, if we had applied our energies and technologies back when Paul first started this, Paul, we'd have flying sky cars now. That they'd be everywhere. But instead, we went with the big three. We went down the road with Ford, Chrysler, and Chevy. And, the big, heavy, compared to air taxis, automobiles weigh as much as a dinosaur does. Whereas in Paul's world, that wouldn't be so at all. Also, you're going to see, let me give more precise things. There's metals that you can make in space because of the weightless environment. You can blend the molecular structure and then lock it in place. If you could see inside your molecular structures of today all over the world, anything that's metal, if you could see inside its molecular structure, it's chaos. Because as the metal's cooling and hardening, here comes the gravity convection curves of the planet, and it just disrupts everything. But in space, we don't have that problem. Matter of fact, in space, we can even lock the molecular structure in place, as I did with my metals, which I locked in honeycomb. Mother Nature had the best idea. Why reinvent it? So we replicated it. Well, you'll end up with products where you'll have a product that will be no thicker than your thumbnail, have 1,000 times the strength of titanium in shear force, weigh less than styrofoam of the same size, and be crystal clear. Trans steel of the 23rd century. We'll have to move in our industries out in space where we can accomplish some of these things so we can meet the demands of the sky car. Also, how about nuclear power without shielding? There's a new way of physics that they're looking at right now, and it's catching a lot of static, and it has for the last 50, 60 years. But they're finding a way to bend shielding, or it acts the same as shielding. They're bending the radioactive waves where they're not, gamma rays travel in a straight line no matter what you do. And they're going to go through anything that hits and go as far as it can until it meets enough force or resistance. That's why you have to have, 18 inches of concrete or 24 inches of dirt to slow the gamma rays down. Well, there's going to be a way of that gamma ray problem is not going to be a problem anymore. It's the way that we're going about nuclear power. We haven't put any effort hardly in the nuclear power. It hasn't changed since back in the 1950s. You're still using tutorial compressors. You're still using all the technologies from the 1940s. You haven't really put an effort into nuclear power. And then because of 3 Mile Isle and bad rep and Fukushima and that disasters, nobody wants to fool with nuclear power because, the radiation would kill you. Well, it will until we learn how to really build nuclear power. We haven't really learned how to do that yet. We're still fumbling around like cavemen with it. But once you get these technological problems set aside, you'll have the kind of power that your sky car is going to require. A nuclear battery with no shielding would be a really cool way to go. The sky car itself weighing just 40, 50 pounds for the entire vehicle. That's where we'll have to get. Because until we get to those points where we have new manufacturing capabilities, new resources of energy that we haven't even found, and who knows, we may go out mining asteroids and dig up out of an asteroid the lithium crystal, something like that. Something that will change our atomic code where Paul's inventions could have a decent chance of making it with the right kind of material weight and power, because that's the biggest downfall of the entire industry. And he's so right. He's also a very honest man. Paul, you're really honest, because too many people will tell him, well, my industry, it's just not going to go anywhere because it weighs too much and I ain't got no power and I can't go very far or very fast. Can't even go 50 miles and I'm going to, burn out my fuel. So that's really quite courageous on your part, Paul. You really have done an awful lot for that industry. They should build a statue for you.
I just want to become a practical product in the market.
Because it's like you invented let's say it's 1860, you invented a perfect working Lamborghini, but there's no oil companies, there's no infrastructure to give you the fuel you need to drive your Lamborghini. You can hook a horse to it, make a very interesting looking cart out of it, but that's about as far as you're going to get with it. The Sky Cab is really it's going to be a real test of our new technologies, our new stuff. But we're going to have different things to work with. We just can't make it right now. We don't have the infrastructure to support a industry such as sky cars. But they will one day.
It's coming regardless. It's going to be here regardless.
Real money. I'm talking billions of dollars. Once you got that kind of funding and attention given to it, then we bring our full weight of our technology down on it. We will crush these problems. We will get past this stuff. And one day, we'll ask whatever the hell happened to George Jetson, what we'll see him go by one day with his little briefcase car. But not until we get new technologies, new manufacturing procedures, and new places to manufacture things. And but I'll tell you what, we won't get there unless for people like Paul, who says, well, let's build the thing. That's what's wrong with a lot of our space industry stuff. We're not out there. We're not doing it. We should be on other planets. Because just building something simple as a habitat for humans to stay on the surface of the moon, you're going to learn so much stuff throughout all your manufacturing bases. Look what rolled out of the Apollo space program, for God's sake. You wouldn't have computers, laptops, cell phones, modems. All that came pouring out of that technology, trying to get to the moon and back. And we look at all the stuff we came out with. That's going to happen again, but you've got to be out there in order to do it. Sitting here on the ground talking about it isn't going to make it. You're going to have rubber meets the road type situation where you're out there physically doing it, and then you'll learn this stuff. Mm-hmm. So the Sky Car, it's definitely in the future for us. It's going to happen one day. We're all going to be dead of old age, and our bones will be dust by the time they get the thing right. But when they do, it will be there, and it will look like George Jetson. It will happen, but it's just we got a ways to go yet, just to build the infrastructure for it. And there's a lot of other stuff. Imagine what nuclear power will do and all the augments that it will experience and how it will change everything. And then let's say we discover a dilithium crystal or something like that out there. It changes everything. But if it wasn't for people like Paul sitting there actually building the thing, like, we're all scratching our heads like, how to make this thing work? We're not going to get anywhere unless we're doing it. And that's why, bless people like Paul that at least get out there and go, let's try to make this thing go. And can you imagine what kind of government we'll have to be able to do that, Paul? All the regulation and crap you're fooling with now, that'll be out the window. It'll be entirely, I don't even know what form of government it will be. It sure won't be what we got right now. It'll be something else. What, I don't know. But things keep changing, Time marches on. Time waits for no man. But it will. I'm always interested in the future. And there's nothing that we can't overcome if we apply the money, the effort, and the research into it. We'll figure it out. But right now, we're just kind of barely flipping and flopping around with this, and we're not really going at it.
Paul, do you have a timeline of, I'm sure you guys get together in the workshop and say, well, maybe, in 2 years we'll have this engine done, or maybe in 10 years we'll have, we'll be able to get this thing going with all the regulatory stuff. I mean, do you set like timelines like that in your laboratory, or?
Well, under the so-called sports aviation, light sports aviation category, it's just really what the rules are, what industry thinks is appropriate, meaning industry wants to protect itself, so it sets up certain standards, and those standards are going to guide this. The interesting thing is the FAA doesn't mind that you go out there and build an aircraft if it's a single passenger, and they can call it ultralight. You can fly it everywhere. And it's simply because if you kill yourself, you made that choice. Now, there are little less willing to let you have a passenger, but they still cover it under the same category. This idea that starts off as a recreational vehicle, it proves how viable this process is in terms of gasoline, noise, and all the other considerations that are important for commercialization. And if it's got a healthy record over a period of time, then it goes to the next stage and is commercialized. But that's like taking steps upwards to get to a point. If you try to do what the industry is doing, and I mean the industry, the legacy and the startups, by going for 5-6 passenger aircraft with a limited market that is costing billions of dollars, about $4 billion last year, $8 billion next year.
Wow.
You're talking about going after a product that has very limited opportunity to be in the marketplace soon. If we go the way we're going, we'll have demonstrating vehicles flying within, it depends always on funding, but what I can do with the modest amount of funding is have them flying and being demonstrated and allowed by the FAA, by the way, for me to fly. I don't have to go through certification or even approval. I can get the ability to fly my aircraft in a specific region almost overnight. It just has to be well engineered. That's the only requirement. They come in with an inspector. They say it's well engineered. They don't take any decision on whether it's practical, stable, whatever. Just it's well engineered, or at least well put together. Then I can fly it in a limited region, but I can fly it and I can build a few of them for demonstrators around the world. That can happen in 2 years. But I guarantee you, by 2030, we will have autonomous one passenger and some two passenger aircraft flying all around, and it's gonna move fast. It's gonna get, according to Morgan Stanley, to 1.5 trillion by 2030. 2040. It's not that long way away. I won't be around, but it's the future. By 2030, I expect to still be here, and I will be able to witness the start of this 1 and 2 passenger practical vehicles that could replace, in most part, the automobile.
Yeah, fantastic. I agree with you 100% on everything you said. What about what kind of funding for the audience listening that may want to get involved out there when this reaches the far depths of the planet here? What kind of funding are you looking for?
The problem is that really funding has always been a problem for small companies, because the SEC, they don't mind rich people losing their money. Right. So they say, you're a sophisticated, you're a qualified investor, you can come invest in Moller International. But Joe Blow on the street, he has very little opportunity to do that. He really has, I've been funded by friends and associates of friends, and they were people who liked what I was doing, and they had a lot of money. And so over the years, we have probably had about $40 million in private money. And then we generated another 60 million through various companies that we created, real estate development, partnership that we put in place. And as you may or may not know, we were the largest manufacturer of high performance exhaust systems in the world at one point. And of course, we made a fair amount of money with that. And then we sold it for a fair amount of money. But engines have always been our goal, because engines lead to sky cars. And sky cars is where I've been moving for 50 years.
Yeah, marvelous. Yeah, a great accomplishment, Paul. Really, we really look up to you for all you have accomplished. It's pretty amazing. And being at the forefront of all that, you can see where that's going. And, thank God we have you here on planet Earth right now to get this thing going. So, what else can I ask you here? Go ahead.
Just going to say, I've gone to a really evolution myself, because back in the 60s, 70s, I saw what many people try to do. build an aircraft that can drive and can also fly. But I learned over a
Mm,
period of time, you end up with a poor car and a poor airplane. And
right.
after all, I finally realized reluctantly, if you can fly, at least take off vertically and fly, why the hell do you want to move around the ground anyhow? But that does require something very special. It requires a particularly small vehicle that can land in a automotive parking space. And that means one passenger and potentially two passengers. But if it's going to be much larger than that, now you got vertiports, heliports, skyports, and that all of a sudden brings your market into a very specialized area, ride sharing or something like that. So I'm my decision to go to one passenger is really driven by my understanding that roughly 80% of the automobiles going down the highway right now have one person. So why the hell do you go chase five or seven passengers when
Yeah.
passenger vehicles can land at a parking spot outside your home? And
Yeah, I
that's
was impressed to see that number that you wrote in your paper. That's people don't think about that. 80% of the drivers out there, 70-80% of the people are just single drivers. So that's a huge market for an air taxi.
yeah, that's the only kind of market you could say could reach 1.5 trillion in 2040. Just think about that number. What kind of vehicle could do that? It has to be something that replaces at least a large portion of the automobiles. It has to be a mass market. You want economy of scale because the economy of scale gives everybody the opportunity to participate. Ride sharing, air taxis carry one person. They've
Mhm.
got to be very inexpensive. They got to be fuel economic, and they have to be automatically controlled because we're not going to have everybody learning to be a pilot. So
Right.
that's really the future, and I know it now. I didn't know it. I was building a four-passenger vehicle, the Skycar 400, thinking this is the right kind of car, and now I've got a 100 that's well on its way to completion. We had a previous model which we put, and we've upgraded that. And so we got the airframe complete. We got the ducted fans complete. We're just waiting for the five-stroke compound rotary engines. So we have also a very quiet engine.
Yeah, if you guys listening want to go to moller.com, MOLLER.com, also www.freedom-motors.com to check out some of Paul's amazing sky cars and inventions. Please make sure you visit that either now or after the show here. Really fascinating stuff he's doing. And of course, you get to see his cars, which hopefully someday David and I will be flying out to California to visit you in your hangar and do a test ride, right, David?
Yeah, I like that. Of course, I got motivated this because I want to imitate the hummingbird. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to fly it, but I have flown it, and that was one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah.
To fly above our building in front of the international press was pretty exciting, and
Wow. Right. Is that's on YouTube, right?
that's
Is
on
that is it?
YouTube. You can find me in a two-passenger vehicle we call the New Era to a very uh, pleasant musical background.
Yeah.
See me flying up and over my building, uh,
Wow. Oh gosh.
and that was certainly the highlight of my life. People often ask me, "Well, what's it like to fly uh, this Sky Car or New Era?" And I have flown in helicopters.
Yeah.
When you're in a helicopter, you have the sense you're being pulled up from above. When you're in the Sky Car or the Nera, you feel like you're being pushed up from below. And that's an entirely different situation. You have a sense of freedom, uh, this magical go anywhere in a personal vehicle. And it is definitely different and definitely extremely exciting by contrast with a helicopter.
Yeah, or a ground effect car.
Yeah. What'd you say, David?
I'm saying he's so right about that. I've learned to fly when years ago when I started flying before I could drive a car, and the crop duster, and it's a sensation, like unlike anything you can compare. I can't even put it in words. You leave the ground and you look down and it's moving under you. And I really find that intriguing what you said, Paul, about the difference of being pulled up and pushed up. That I never thought about that. And my God, I have 3,000 flight hours. I never once ever thought about what that feeling would be like, going from being pulled up to pushed.
Yeah, I never thought about it myself until it happened. It was just
See, that's the exciting thing about what you're doing, Paul. There's marvels waiting for us out there that we don't even know about yet.
Yeah, you'll love it. You'll love it.
And you sent my head to spinning, that's for sure.
Where is that vehicle now, Paul? Where do you have the new Era?
Well, we have re-engineered it to carry a bigger payload, and we have versions of it that are very utilitarian. The original one was kind of like two people sitting there with a bubble dome, the real Jetson vision.
Right.
It was not easily accessible getting into it. It was relatively low speed. It was not inherently stable aerodynamically, which means it needed to be artificially stabilized, which it always is in hover to make it easy for the pilot. But you don't really want to be artificially stabilized in forward flight. You want to be have the aircraft inherently, so you don't have to build in artificial stabilization in forward flight. We know that these fighters today are artificially stabilized in forward flight, but
right.
They had a magnetic impulse over San Francisco that took out two F-104s. And so when you're in forward flight where you're going to spend 99% of your time, you want an inherently stable aircraft. That was not a characteristic of the new Era. It was designed for low speed, and it could be.
How did you fix the stabilization on that? Was it all just manual, or do you have something now that has a gyro?
If you saw me flying in 1967 with my first aircraft, which we called the XM2, I was like on a bouncing board. I was 4 or 5 feet off the ground bouncing around because it was manually stabilized. I was fighting the controls. I wasn't a particularly good pilot, so I didn't do a very good job. But by 2088 or 89, where you see that flight on our website, where I was flying above the building, that had artificial stabilization. So I was just sitting there with the control, directing where I was going to go. I didn't have to think at all about stability. That was built into the vehicle.
Yes, yeah. I put that YouTube video in the chat room here so people can see it. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, we're still looking for partners, of course. If for us to get to the next stage, we're looking for partners. We're talking a number of people. We're talking a number of organizations around the world. We're promoting not just the engine for the Sky Car, but we're promoting the engine for any number of applications where weight to power is important. And 80% of these 200 million engines produced per year, weight to power is the number one priority. You can think of portable generators. You can think of recreational vehicles. If I come out with an engine that has twice the horsepower per pound and I put it in a jet ski, I control the market. And it's just the way it is. Power to weight is everything in many products. So we have a tremendous advantage in the world engine market, and we're going to try to take that forward along with its use in the Sky Car, which is a longer range opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Are you pushing the New Era or the Skybot? Like, which one are you focusing on, or you have these projects all going at the same time?
Well, in as much as we've clearly identified the future as a 200-mile-an-hour vertical takeoff, single passenger, autonomous air taxi, that's number one. But the New Era, in its rescue form, where we show you can come up to the side of a building, a skyscraper, and pull people out of it. There's a video, by the way, out there of that, where we demonstrate it visually. how we would do that: come up to the side of a building, pick up someone, and rescue them. You can't do that with a helicopter, of course. So this was a unique application, and one of the potential applications for the new era, which in its utilitarian form, in its ability to be used as a rescue vehicle, a border patrol vehicle where speed is not important, uh, and inexpensiveness is important. Having it be cheap enough, you
Right.
can have thousands of them
Yeah.
in a border patrol application, something like that. That's
And
that's a
is it
market
scalable?
opportunity, but
Is it scalable to,
uh,
or do you like to keep it a
it's
certain?
interesting you asked that question. That's a good question. The problem is that if you double the weight of a vehicle, you
Mhm.
triple the power required, and that's a case of diminishing returns.
Double,
So
triple? Oh, wow.
yeah, so if you go down like we're going down to one and
Yeah.
two, away from the 5 and 7, our power goes from. I mean, if you take the 5 to 7 passenger vehicles, they have 2,500 horsepower, 2,500 horsepower in a 5 to 7 passenger vehicle. It's electrical horsepower,
Right.
which
Electrical horsepower. Right.
sucks that battery dry
That's a lot.
very quickly.
That's
We
powerful. Yeah.
our single passenger vehicle still requires 400 horsepower. Taking off vertically takes a lot of power. If you make a big rotor like a helicopter, the power goes down to 150 horsepower for a two passenger or 200 horsepower for a two
Mhm.
passenger.
Right.
But
Mhm.
the smaller the fans, the bigger the power requirement.
That makes sense, though. Yeah, it does. I got a couple questions from our audience here. One of them from Glenn is, what would be the landing or launch radius for a single passenger unit? Uh, it's just the size of the unit, correct?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's 13 feet long, less than 10 feet wide. It'll land in a city parking lot, which I believe is about 18 feet long
Yeah.
and 10 feet wide. So, and that is absolutely essential.
Hmm.
That's the market. If you can't do that, you really put yourself in a different world. And that's why
Right.
it was
Yeah.
not easy to get the lake down to that. It's probably going to be about 2 feet longer than that because we're going to scale the vehicle up by about 15% because right now I can fit in it, but
Mhm.
a 6 foot person weighing 300 pounds could not.
Right. Well, I'm 6'3", 260 pounds. So we
You'll
got we
you'll
got we
get
got
in
a
my you'll
spec
get
for
in
me.
my Skycar 100, but not the one that I fly at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. Another question from Glenn was, do you have any anti-gravity technology to aid flight control and stabilization?
No, we're a long ways away from anti gravity. I'm saying that, recognizing that if one is being a studier of alien technology, clearly there's examples of that in our hands or in the hands of the military in certain areas, but they haven't really been able to
Mhm.
reverse engineer it yet. They've actually been able to test it and see it and be able to fly it, but they have not been able to reverse engineer it. And that may take some time because it probably
Well,
involves some technology we haven't got.
go ahead,
Because
David.
of the very nature of the problem is that anti-gravity, I get that asked all the time. People say, oh, you must have anti-gravity. You see people floating around in a room. And that's actually an optical illusion. That's people in a hyperbolic curve in free fall. But
I think we lost David.
there are floating mountains that were held.
David, don't move. Just stay in the hot zone.
Unfortunately for the natives, the biggest deposits were under their tree.
Right.
blow them away in the tree to get to the unobtainium. But it's going to take something like that, and it's going to take an influx of something we don't even know of right now to push this industry. But what's really cool is that one day we will find something like that, and there you are, Paul, with the entire industry just waiting to get its hands on it. I think that's so cool.
David, I'm afraid it could be 1,000 years.
Well,
Yeah,
you know, he said
I don't know what all will be coming, but there'll be stuff down the road that will be needed, and because of people like you that have thought ahead.
Well,
The entire infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. David, I did get some intel, fellas, that Bell has a small anti-gravitic craft that goes a couple 100 miles per hour. I don't know what you heard, David, but
see, that's the thing about anti-gravity. It's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
You think that you can slide a piece of lead between you and gamma rays, and you shut off the gamma rays. Okay. Well, following that flow of matrix of logic, why can't you slide something between you and the earth and cut off gravity? It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how it works. That's why I'm skeptical of anti-gravity, because it's such a thing that's so out of reach right now. But boy, when we get there, oh man, it'll be like the invention of electricity all over again. The applications will be mind-boggling.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it.
You can think of a couple hundred things right off the bat.
Yeah, David, I know, we can't talk about certain things because of our, compartmentalized projects we're involved with, but we did see some alien reproduction vehicles, ARVs, but they still never, I mean, of course, it's different now than, 20 years ago when I got out, but they were trying to crack it, but they never perfected it and completely. Now they're trying to put these units on just regular craft, military craft, to lighten the craft a little bit and create less resistance from air and water. But I haven't, really seen them, completely make, 100%, that, even though, you know what I mean? There's always some sort of combustion associated with it, is what I mean, or something. Which brings me up to, Paul's paper back in 1975, 76 there. He actually wrote one of the first UFO papers there, Paul. I don't know if you want to enlighten the audience about that.
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of side thing. I was a professor at the University of California teaching mechanical aeronautical engineering, but I'd always had a tremendous interest in flying saucers. It's the best way to describe it. Obviously, that's where I started out. I started out trying to build a flying saucer because of my introduction to alien aircraft through Keyhole. And that led me to give a course at the University of California called the Social and Technical Implications of I can't remember whether I used the term flying saucers or alien aircraft or whatever, but the idea was what propulsion system could work in a flying saucer. And my engineering approach was look at the empirical evidence. What happens to people around alien aircraft? And I talked to two people who were very close to alien aircraft, and they described in detail a sequence of events that started with, as the vehicle approached their automobile, they first had the headlights go out, and then because we were using the issue of high magnetic fields, and high magnetic fields cause the resistance of wiring to increase. So if this vehicle gets close to an automobile, the magnetic effects will cause the resistance of the lights to increase and the lights go out. and the ignition system follows, or the ignition system, depending on the type of design, could precede the lights going out. And finally, the heavy cables of the starting system prevent the starter from being used. So first is the lights, the ignition, and then the person gets excited because the engine stops and tries to start it, and he can't start it because the starter doesn't work. And as the vehicle moves away, the lights come back on, the ignition works, and the starter works. Both cases are virtually identical. And so I felt, well, maybe we can experiment. I worked with a science engineer from Stanford, Frank Chilton, who's a pretty knowledgeable person in electromagnetic fields. And we determined that it would take a field of about 200 kilogauss, 200 Gauss, to be able to do what I was witnessing or what I was aware of. Um, and we learned something else in the process. We learned that if you're in a field of 200 kilogauss and you move your arm, you will generate eddy currents in the arm that'll feel like you're paralyzed. And this was witnessed by a number of people as well. In fact, a vehicle flew over a town in Italy and knocked out most of the people in town. So there is these direct physiological effects, and I use those as a stepping stone in this course I gave. And then I looked at some of the social implications of this, which were pretty negative back in the time that I wrote this paper. But that's changed today, where the majority of Americans believe in alien aircraft, that they do exist. And recently, the Air Force has actually even accepted and admitted that.
Yeah, times have changed, right, David? Yeah, I mean, it used to be, you're talking about this stuff. Even me, 20 years ago, when I just came forward, probably 10 years ago, that it was a totally different situation. You're looked at as, you're crazy, you're a kook, and now people are calling me up, apologizing, and that I haven't heard from a long time, saying, "Man, you were right the whole time. We misjudged you." And it's silly not to think that there's other life out there. Number one, it's pretty ignorant to think that. And since the Vatican came out and the Pope said aliens exist and they're children of God, Alibaba, and that's it, then it must be for real, then, Paul.
Yeah.
But no one talks about that YouTube video. So I think, every day we get a step closer. We definitely, David and I, David, I don't know if you want to share that top secret Senate meeting yesterday that we got wind of, which was interesting to say the least, that these lawmakers, David, if you want to talk about that for a second, let Paul know what happened. It's not classified, but we can talk about it.
Right. What happened? They had a skiff meeting, which is highly classified, and they brought the congressmen and congresswomen of the UFO investigation panel of Congress in there. They took them into the room, and I got to give the media credit. They were smart this time. They waited outside the doors with their cameras. And as soon as the Congress people stepped out into the hallway, bang, the cameras went right into their faces. And you could tell they were shaking. There was something, they saw something, they were shown something. And all the lawmakers said, well, we can't talk about it, but the needle has moved. That's a big thing. And then they also said that all the lawmakers now believe David Garush completely,
right,
telling the truth. And they said there was so much other stuff they were shown, and they cannot tell us about it. But apparently, the intelligence community, it was every leader in the intelligence community was at that meeting, and apparently they dropped their pants, and the lawmakers got to see what they've been talking about, and so we'll see what shakes out of that. I know that, by the way, that the UFOs, some of the UFOs I've seen moving, they're got to be using some form of electromagnetic fusion containment device in their engines, because when I was working on mine in 1971, I kept getting this algorithms on this repeating echo thing, and turned out it wasn't an echo. And I thought it was an echo in that type of math. You get a repeating equations, or you get repeating what we call an echo effect of the electromagnetic systems. But what it was, it turned out to be something else. It was something that was removing inertia, momentum, and kinetic energy, all the forces involved in movement. And so I went, my God, it's an inertia dampener is what it is. Mm-hmm. So that would allow a UFO craft to come in at 5,000 miles an hour or 10,000. Doesn't matter what the speed is. Do a 90-degree turn and go. And they would be fine. If it's anything organic in the cockpit, that kind of gravitational force, they'd be rendered into soup. I mean, it's just, you couldn't withstand it. But with the inertia dampener, you would be able to set a secondary field in the cockpit area. So they come through, do a 90-degree turn at 10,000 miles an hour, and they feel absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they're on their own containment field of energy. They have their own density field. So, exactly. They're creating their own density field. That's how it works. Yeah, you're right, David. Absolutely.
I know that applying that technology to what Paul's got going, God knows what would turn into that. I don't even know. Paul, what would you do?
Paul, Dave and I were talking about this just the other day. Dave and I said, they have these drones. These kids are flying these little drones. They're doing these races where the drones are going 100 miles an hour, going through these loops and right-hand turns at 100 miles an hour. Why can't we scale that?
I mean, the speed that they're moving, they go by, so they're just a streak when they go by, and they'll turn. They're literally flying them through keyholes. Yeah. Make the course of the race of the course of the race. Yeah. And I thought, my God, what would it be like if you scaled that thing up and you were in the cockpit moving as fast as they were? It's going to look like soup.
Yeah, without inertial dampeners.
It's not going to be good for you.
Right, David? Without the inertial dampeners, we wouldn't last in that sky car for sure.
Great way to lose weight. We'll just spit you out real thin.
Yeah. Paul's little bubble he has over the thing will just look like a big, like a hamster in a microwave there.
See what Paul would do, applying that to his world and what he'd come up with. He'd probably have something very cool.
I think we might see something in the next 10 years, anti-gravitic, available for civilian use. I mean, I think there's going to be a small...
Somebody have to produce something because right now, I haven't seen any anti-gravity stuff. Have you, Paul?
No, and I think we're a long ways away. We were promised controlled fusion, 50 years ago, more than that. Yeah. And look, we're making progress, but it is extremely slow. There's too much physics that we don't understand involved.
We don't have all the volumes of the physics.
Yeah, they have a $10 million year head start on us, which is going to be a little difficult to catch up with.
Yeah, Paul, you're right. Dang.
Yeah, it's it is a tough one, fellas. That's for sure. Right now we have what we have, and it's all up to if they want to release that educational platform at some point. Like I said, I don't think it's perfected at all yet. Teletransportation will probably come out before that because they've already transferred atoms from Washington, D.C. to Beijing through atoms, of an apple. I think
I got called into that.
You did?
One day. Yeah, they want to know about the algorithms that was involved since I was using. That's the problem. Is like, Lord America, we're talking about beaming. Mm-hmm. Everybody watches Star Trek and go, "Oh, that'd be cool." Do you know how difficult that is? You got to move trillions of cells and then reassemble them back in the same way. Otherwise, you get to the other side, it's not going to look too good. You're going to have your butt would be where your mouth is. It's not good.
It'll be a good weight loss program, that's for sure.
Just the mathematical challenge of beaming is just mind-boggling. But with the advent of computers and supercrystals, manufacturing space, you would be able to apply that and contain those massive numbers in a coherent way. But like Paul said, is that along with anti-gravity is a long ways away.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, we won't get there if we're not trying.
We have to make the steps. All right.
All the technology, we won't get there unless we try, and we're trying, and we're in the environment. We're trying to figure it out, and that's how so much technological transfer occurred in the Apollo days.
Mm-hmm.
Why the NTTC was built, the National Technology Transfer Center of NASA, which has always been an unwanted stepchild, because it was forced on them by President Kennedy at the time. And now, to find the National Technology Transfer Center, you have to go to, its address is, I'm making this up, Jesuit College, Wheeling, West Virginia. Where it was. Last time I worked with them, they were in Washington, D.C. until the postal pork barrel, Senator Byrd in West Virginia got hold of it, and his son runs the technology center. Little nepotism there, you think?
Yeah, just had there.
But that's an excellent place. It's all free. Your tax dollars pay for it. Go use it.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm going to turn it over to the audience. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the taskbar there, and the little text bar here, and I'll turn those over to myself, Paul, and David here. So Paul, when is David and I going to come out there this year and take these things for a spin?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I was joking around. I said, when this year do you want, at the end of the year here, when do you want Dave and I to swing on by and take a look? Where are you keeping all your stuff? You have a hangar, or you have it at your home, or where do you keep these vehicles?
No, I have about 16,000 square feet of facilities. A complete engine production facility. I acquired all of the assets of the only American companies that ever produced rotary engines, or in one case produced them in volume, otherwise in limited numbers. I acquired the assets of Outboard Marine Corporation, General Motors, and Infant Engine Company, and I have that equipment. It was developed under a $150 million contract at General Motors. This is big equipment. It's equipment designed to produce rotary engines, because GMC was about to bring out a Corvair and a Corvette with a rotary engine in the mid-'70s.
Wow. Yeah.
So they actually were up to speed. The engine was ready to go into place, and then there was a crisis of fuel availability and a crisis of emissions, and they declined to go forward with that. But I have that in a 8,000 square foot facility. I have offices for Moller International and Freedom Motors in a 6,000 square foot facility, and I have a new 5,000 square foot facility where I have my wind tunnel. I have a large wind tunnel.
Oh, nice. Is that a clean room too?
And pardon me?
Is that also, do you have to have those, or any of these have clean rooms for the mechanics, for the machining? Or
well, certainly we have a clean area when we're dealing with our electronics.
And how big is your wind tunnel, Paul? How big is that wind tunnel for your models?
It's a 2x2 which is capable of about 250 miles an hour. So we run 9-to-1 scale models in there of our 100 and 12-to-1 scale models of our 2 and 4 passenger aircraft. But we can get very accurate stability, lift and drag data from that, which we also back up with a analysis. There are systems programs today that allow you to do it. But even Boeing or Airbus will still run wind tunnel tests on the for verifying the theoretical analysis, and we have that capability. We also have some very powerful dynos for our engine testing in that facility, and that's where we keep the aircraft that we have flown in that 5,000 square foot facility. So we would like to have all of the facilities together, but that wasn't possible. We're spread out over maybe a 5-mile area. We're spread over 3 facilities.
One of the questions that they're asking here, Paul, is what is the RPM of your 5-stroke?
Well, it's the same as the 4-stroke. Our RPM is limited by what we dare run the propellers at, and that's limited by noise generation. So we would like to not run the propellers above 6,000 RPM on a 2-foot diameter propeller. Otherwise, we get Mach number noise generation. But we will eventually be going to 3-foot diameter propellers, and we will need a planetary gearbox on the front of the engine, but it's very light. It only weighs 10 pounds on the front of the engine. Then we can run the engines to 10,000 RPM. The beauty of the rotary engine, it can run at 10,000 RPM all day. When Mazda's racing at Daytona, they were running 12 to 13,000 on a bigger engine. So that, I mean, they're amazing engines. They were used initially to drive. And one of the companies we acquired was OMC, and they were producing snowmobile engines, rotary snowmobile engines. And if the belt broke, the engine would go to 22,000 RPM, and the flywheel would fly apart. They really can just rev up almost unlimited number, but unfortunately, we're confined by driving the propeller. And we would then be able to virtually double the power overnight by using a gearbox.
Wow. And what are those propellers made out of, Paul?
Pretty much everything we've done is carbon fiber. And because they're not that big, we use solid carbon fiber. If you get the bigger diameters, you may end up with a foam core. But even a solid propeller probably weighs a few ounces each.
How do you keep that vibration frequency with all those fans going? How do you keep that down? What is your secret?
Well, you ask an interesting questions, because if you run this engine just arbitrarily with all 8 engines at the same time, you get periods of time when the noise is quite low, and periods of time, and at virtually the same RPM. They're not really exactly the same RPM, but they're varying a little bit. You'll get times when it's really quite quiet because the noise frequencies are canceling out. One engine will cancel out the other noise if it's 180 degrees out of phase. So if you happen to get a situation where the engines get out of phase enough versus the other, the noise will go right down. Unfortunately, if they get amplified on top of each other, they get quite loud. So we have electronic controls that keep the RPM controlled in an extremely narrow region. In other words, the RPM floats, but it always floats to a number where the frequencies are in opposition so that they cancel each other to the best you can.
Okay. All right. That makes sense too. Let's see here. What's the most difficult tech problem that you had to overcome during your 50 years of getting this thing off the ground here?
Well, I would say the most important thing is always getting the power. As I said,
that's what David said. Yeah, David chimed in.
Doesn't have more than 1 horsepower per pound. we acquired these German rotary engines, which we were able to get up to close to 2 horsepower per pound. Then we acquired the OMC engines, and through many modifications, many patents pending and many patents issued, we're able to get up to over 3 horsepower per pound. And as I explained, I'm sure we can get to 4 horsepower per pound. If we go to planetary gears where you can run the engine at 12,000 RPM, we're now over 5 horsepower per pound. But the aircraft is practical at 3 horsepower per pound. I got a decent payload. I can sell you a Sky Car. You can fly it to a parking lot anywhere in America when they're approved to do that. That's 90% of the answer. The other 10% is going to make you able to go faster, carry more weight, but otherwise it will be no more. There'll be no greater advantage than that. We're almost there really with what we have.
Another question is, Glenn says, where does the horsepower torque curve peak at what RPM, if there is?
Well, if you're going to a peak horsepower of 12,000 or something, you'll peak at around 8. And so you'll be most economical at 8. And of course, once you go through transition, once you've finished the V2L where you're using a huge amount of power, then you cut back the speed of the propellers to a very low level. So this aircraft will be extremely quiet in cruise. We just have to get it down to 80 dBA, which is acceptable in cities at 25 feet.
And what is this, as of today, Paul, what is the ceiling height regulation for a air taxi? Is there a certain, how we do with ultralight, we do with...
The FAA hasn't made that determination, but I expect it's pretty much anything below the need for pressurization.
Right.
And then again, eventually these vehicles will all be pressurized because it's so much more economical to fly at high altitude and a lot faster for the same fuel economy if you're pressurized. But that's coming. That probably won't happen in my lifetime, but it could.
And you'll also have CO2 thrusters on there just in case you go weightless in the exo atmospheric area.
Well, all of our aircraft have parachutes, ballistic parachutes. That's a given. In fact, that is going to be a requirement by the FAA on any of these air taxis, because if you picture a world where you have hundreds of these vehicles flying over a city, you can't have them dropping out of the sky.
That's what I was going to say. How are you going to move? Like David and I were talking about this the other day. We deploy the parachute on the air car, but wait a second, Sky Car, but wait a second. How are you going to not hit a building or a power line?
Good question. But the question is, what condition are you in? Did you run out of, because our aircraft are hybrid. In other words, they have batteries and engines, and it can fly on batteries or engines. And so depending what happens, you lose an engine, you're still flying on batteries. But let's say you were hit by another airplane or something, and you really took out your air mobility, and you're going down with a parachute. You would need very little power remaining, either battery or fuel, to maneuver the aircraft, because it's dropping vertically, and your fans rotate. And so they have the ability to be rotated into a direction when they're dropping vertically to the normal takeoff condition, which means they're pointing horizontally. So you would then be able to maneuver around to some degree, just to be sure that you landed on a spot where there wasn't somebody standing. And that's the future. It's interesting. The FAA is requiring this. They're requiring the ability to maneuver around under a parachute. And it's driving the industry crazy. They say we can't do it. It's not physically possible. But it's going to be required because, again, if the sky's filled with these things and they're going to fail in some way or other, then you have to protect the public underneath them. And it's a new world.
What'd you say, David? What's it called?
Hydroxine thrusters would work.
Hydroxine thrusters, like they use up in the shuttle?
10 pounds. Yeah, they weigh about 10 pounds.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah. That's what I was trying to say earlier. I didn't know the correct terminology.
If you got the payload capability, you could sort of use something like that. Um, it only needs to be used in a very short period of time because you certainly aren't going to take a person out of the city. You're just going to make sure that he lands in the middle of the highway or a parking lot or a lawn or something like that.
Right. Just like when the planes have emergency landings on the interstates or whatever, right?
Then you can get out and clean out your pants.
What happens if you're over water though? You have a flotation emergency device on your Sky car?
Well, the vehicle floats. I mean, it's basically
It's a boat, yeah.
Where your cockpit windshield opens at that level. That's above the water line. So you're just going to sit there and float. I don't think we would picture that use because again, why do you need water takeoff when you can take off vertically anywhere? So water takeoff is no longer a characteristic that has any particular value, but you certainly have to be able to survive a waterfall. And so if you land in the water, first off, you're going to come nose down, which is going to reduce the impact, and it'll sit there and float until someone comes along and picks you up.
Yeah, no, I understand. What kind of classification is that Icon that lands on land and water?
What is the what? I'm sorry?
The Icon craft. I've been following Icon for, since they ever started 15, 20 years ago. What is that classified? That craft is
classified by the same category that we're going to be classified, light sports aviation. It's got a little bit of an additional variation allowed by the FAA that it can weigh more because it can land on water as well. I think they allowed it to weigh about 200 pounds more than the normal requirement. The normal requirement is not over 1,430 pounds, which covers 1 and 2 passenger Sky cars. But if you start throwing floats on top of that and other things, you could exceed the limit in a 2 passenger. So they made a special. That's a marvelous aircraft, by the way. Marvelous aircraft for a number of reasons.
I love the design. I've been following them. I was actually thinking about getting one back in the day. I just wanted to make sure they worked out all the kinks and everything. But yeah, I think they did a great job with it, and especially the power to, it's so light, that craft, and simple. It's a very easy craft to fly.
Very easy to fly, and really doesn't have any kinks from what I've been able to read. There's been accidents, but everyone has been driven by the pilot himself, being silly drunk or on drugs.
I heard about that. Yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah.
It's a great aircraft, fabulous design. Unfortunately, I was approached by the company. They asked me if I was interested in acquiring it.
Oh, really? Wow.
Because it looks like I might not survive. They're into economic issues. The problem is, how many people can afford a $400,000 aircraft that goes a little over 100 miles an hour? And they told me they're trying to get it certified for international sales. In other words, move it out of this light sports category into a commercial. But that, I think, is too expensive for them to accomplish before they run into trouble. So I have a very significant belief that they have problems.
Yeah,
they are located, by the way. The company's located only 10 miles from me here.
Wow, really?
In Dixon, California.
Yeah, in Dixie, California. Okay. Well, I have a question for both David Adair and Paul. There's videos that have came out, and I was not part of this project in the military. Maybe you've seen this video where the military soldier is on a round platform where there's bars that come up that he holds on to, and he's zooming, he's doing a test flight through a big open space, also a wooded area. But I didn't see any downward thrust on the plants, the trees, or the grass. And this has been rotating out there now for about 10 years, this video.
Yeah, it's been out
before all the fake.
It's probably been out there about 30 years, honestly. It's the Hiller flying platform. Yeah.
So what is that? What's it called?
Hiller Hiller, Hiller flat platform. It has
Okay. And
a
what is that?
it has about a 40 horsepower Nelson air-cooled engine underneath it, and it has a fairly big propeller, so the air speed is not really high. But it was
Okay.
they flew it for a long time, and then they discovered it was aerodynamically unstable. In other words, if they got beyond a certain lean point, they never recovered. So they decided it was too dangerous. But still, it was. Uh, it could not fly very long. It could fly for 10, 15 minutes, but not any longer than that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was about to say, where's the fuel coming from? It's so small, maybe just a gallon or so. It didn't
Yeah,
look
yeah. It was a small vehicle, and again, it had an engine producing probably a horsepower per pound. So 40 horsepower. Engines only weighed 40 pounds. In my case, they would have weighed 400.
right. I'm gonna put that video, everyone, in the chat room so you guys can see what we're talking about. Like he said, it's been out probably forever. I mean, 30 years or more. It's an old video, that's for sure. It's funny. I put the search thing in there for the platform, and guess what came up? It says one's for sale.
One was for sale. A Hiller flat platform is for sale.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to get that if I ever put together a museum.
Yeah, well, there's one at the National Air and Space Museum. They have one there.
Right,
And,
right.
and then they have, now that I see it here, and then let's see here. Let me go back. That's really funny that it even came up. Okay, let's see what it says here. Yeah, here for sale. Okay. Second Life Marketplace. It's boxed. Prototype 1031-A-1. I'll send it to you guys just for shits and giggles.
Good. Be interested. Please do that.
I am. I'm going to do it right now. I'll send it to your. Let's see how much they want for it. Huh. Oh, you got to inquire.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's a couple
50s.
100,000 or more.
1950s, Paul. You're right. Look at this.
Yeah, it goes way back.
40 knots. Okay. I'll put it in the thing here. I'm also going to just email it to you, to both of you. I'll put it in the link, guys, so you can see it as well. Here we go. Paste. And then let me drop that email here for you real quick. Yeah, there's always these things that pop up, now and then that people write in, and I was just always curious. I don't know if you guys know of any other, hover, what's going on? You got these guys with the jetpacks. It's so costly. I don't see how these guys with the jetpacks. I can see for military. I can see that for special rescue operations maybe. But I just don't. I don't. It's just so expensive, and you're basically strapped to a bomb.
Yeah, and they don't fly long enough to really be useful.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see where that's going and why they're putting so much money into it. That guy in Australia owns that company, David and Paul. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, I've seen that guy fly.
Yeah. He does shows and stuff, but that's some serious fuel right there.
Yeah, everybody wants to be a hummingbird, and you can't.
Right.
You can be a hummingbird for a short period of time.
Yeah. Sure.
29 feet free falling formula for gravity fall. 29 feet per second.
Yeah, getting down's not a problem. Okay, guys, I did send it to your emails. Take a look at that at your leisure. Okay, let me look at these questions back here. I think I missed a couple. Glenn said, Paul, is there a maximum atmospheric pressure the vehicle can sustain? Well, you did say it's pressurized. Eventually, will be.
Well, it would be
Um,
pressurized. Uh, it's just that's just a structural issue. You build a structure long enough to support or strong enough to support the pressure inside. I think we've shown that the ideal speed will be up there in the area of 25,000 feet. You're not going to get into the commercial airspace of 35,
yeah,
40, and
yeah.
it's primarily an unused space right now. Executive jets fly there, but it's a world of great freedom. Vehicles could be miles apart and still be flying around in huge numbers.
You think they're going to have definitely their own radar, or since it's all AI traffic, air traffic controlled?
Well, radar will be a backup, but you'll have all the transponders into a central integrating system that knows about with differential GPS. They will know about every aircraft within inches, and that's the truth, within inches of each other, and know if there's a movement towards each other that's unacceptable. This will all be part of the algorithm.
So,
It's comparing highway infrastructure and the cost. This is going to be cheap.
oh, okay, that makes sense too. What about the have the drones and even most new cars now? Even my car has the sensors that won't, it hits the brakes if you're getting too close to someone. You'll have a proximity warning system, I'm sure, probably on the vehicle as well, right?
Yeah, except you might have that, but it's not there for any
For manual,
fundamental reason because
right?
that's all going to be done for you.
Hmm.
They probably won't give you that because they don't want you to be confused or upset, to make you
Hmm.
nervous. Because I suppose there'll be some kind of failure mode that they would announce if that were to happen. But in a normal operation, you'll over a period of time, you'll be confident enough to get in this vehicle and just accept it that this is super safe because of the
Hmm.
redundancy, because of the replication of various power sources and power alternatives. Um,
Yes.
it's going to
Well,
be safer than automobile ever was by far.
right. No, I can see that. That makes total sense. I'm going to go negative here, though, fellas. David, what happens if there was a Corona mass ejection? And the thing is, all plans would be going down. David, with your technology, how we were talking about EMP proofing the grid, would there be a way to Faraday cage this car so it could survive a EMP or a coronal mass ejection from the sun, which we're due for a big one here soon?
What do you think, Paul? Put the chicken wire over it?
Put some chicken wire over it, Paul, he said.
I would say just accept the consequences to make sure that your parachute still can be ejected no matter what the hell happens. Still can go down with the parachute.
Right, the parachute. Well, it seems like a very safe vehicle. Everyone knows flying is safer than driving. That's for sure. And that, I think that will be forever, as long as there's asphalt and a 2,000-pound vehicle hurling down the highway. Um, Being a medic and seeing a lot of accidents, also flight accidents as well. It's just I think it just gets safer in the future over time. I think air travel just keeps getting safer.
Well, I invented distributed propulsion to save my own life. You might say I'm a risk taker,
Oh,
and it's true.
really?
To
Okay.
some degree, I was a risk taker. I've broken probably, I guess, 7 or 8 bones in my body over the years,
I'm
taking
sure.
but I didn't ever feel like taking the risk of taking off in an aircraft. I never had an interest in becoming a pilot, even a helicopter. Well, I had interest in becoming a helicopter pilot, but I was a farmer's son. I didn't have any money. My father didn't have any money, and it was in 1950s. That was $5,000, and that's a lot of money in today's world. So I didn't go there, and actually, I'm lucky because I probably would have killed myself because I was never anal enough to do it in a safe manner. I would have taken risk, and so
Right.
somebody took care of me and kept me away from that. But it's it's going to be a very, very safe world where you just accept that nothing's going on. Remember, as I said, I invented distributed propulsion because with a number of power plants and the ability to operate with one or two failed, and a number of computers with the same one or two failure capability, you're going to eliminate that virtually guaranteed one-time failure sometime, which might not have ended
I
well.
never thought of it that way, Paul. That is amazing. David and I are pilots, and I don't know, David, what happens when the second engine goes out? I think well,
I'm looking for a parachute.
yeah, we're looking for a parachute. He can lose two engines and still fly the vehicle. I mean, how safe is that? That's amazing.
Yeah, and remember what I said, you have both batteries and fuel power. So you have a double opportunity there, even if you lost a complete system. Now, if you lose a complete fuel system, you have a very short time to get yourself down to the ground. But you still got, if you do it in terms of fly down to close to the ground and then engage the vertical takeoff capability, you still have a fair capability with battery power alone.
Paul, do you know the glide ratio on a Skycar?
Well, the latest one, which is my Skycar 100, is over 20 to 1. We have 18-foot wings on a 13-foot long aircraft. So we've got a very good aspect ratio, which is key. And it's very, very aerodynamic. So, yeah, 20 to 1. That, of course, is at a certain speed. That's at a speed of about 145 miles an hour. At cruise speed, it's more like 15 to 1. Cruise speed being 200 miles an hour.
Winds too.
Yeah, the winds, he said, too. Yeah. Well, that's pretty amazing, actually. That's a.
Good though.
It is.
That's not bad, Paul.
That's not bad. I'm telling you. Better than an Apache H64 going down.
It gets 100. It gets over 100 passenger miles per gallon. That's key. Over 100 passenger miles per gallon. And the average automobile in America gets about 35 passenger miles per gallon.
Right.
You know the phrase they tell people that if they knew the statistical odds of getting hurt or killed or maimed in a car wreck, they'd never get in a car.
Yeah.
So I wonder this might not be as bad as a car.
Oh no, we were just talking about that, David. I mean, it's definitely safer than a car.
Yeah, it's got
all hands.
It's got much more.
There's definitely
redundancy of car. The thing that saves the car is you can drive to the side of the road and walk, but that's not an option. Here, you better have other things to take over with speed, potential failure.
I had a captain. I was stationed at the England Air Force Base, Louisiana, A-10. It's an A-10 base, Warthog base there, A-10. I had this new Honda CBR 600RR motorcycle, and I had one of my captain's store who went down in Iraq. Our air transportable hospital was deployed over there in Desert Storm. Anyway, back at the States, I got it, and he was at the hospital, and we were talking, and we were walking out, and he said, "Hey, why don't you take my brand new bike for a ride?" He goes, "Oh, no, Emery. Motorcycles are very, very dangerous." And I'm looking at him. He's the best A-10 pilot in the world. I said, "Captain, what are you talking about? You fly A-10s." He goes, "Oh, yeah, well, let me tell you something, son. I have a choice before I hit the ground if I want to eject. You don't have a choice before you hit the ground." I thought that was hilarious, and it stuck with me my whole life.
A bike's natural position is lying down.
Yeah, there's two types of riders. Those that have been down, those are going down. That's it. I should just buy a motorcycle that has an ejection seat that's as powerful as the ones we use. It'll just add up about 1,200 pounds, but yeah. So let me look back over here, see if we have answered everyone's questions and stuff. This is a great interview, guys. I really love talking about this stuff and learning more about Paul's experience that he's been through all these beautiful sky cars. You guys got to check out his website. He's got so many videos out there. I did forward you guys a lot of
They
those
could
videos.
go, by the way, Emery, they could go to YouTube and put in my name or put in Scott.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, and they'll get hundreds of, they'll go a history, long history, interviews that I did over the years. And they go to, I don't know what they do on Facebook. I never checked it, but certainly on Google, they'll get a couple million references to Skycar, a name we have patented and registered. So there's a lot of options besides going to our website if they just want to look at the history of the different aircraft we built.
Yeah, absolutely. Darla, turn your mute button on. I'm getting back chatter. From.
I just wanted you to remind you to tell everyone about.
Oh yeah, I will. Thank you, Darla. Darla's got the nano blue. One of my inventions. I particularized 0.02 nano zinc into a nutraceutical, and or a cosmic ceutical is what we call it in the laboratory, right, Glenn? But yeah, getting back to what you were saying, Paul, is I put a couple of your YouTube videos in the chat, and if you just go to YouTube and put Moller, Skycar in there's a lot of different ones. He has a lot of different models, which you can see on his website, and definitely look into that as well. So yeah, this nano zinc, I always throw it in there to let everyone know. I do a little pitch. We definitely go to emerysmith.co for, it's an anti-infective, antiviral, anti-cancer. I'm actually making you a pack, Paul, that, because I know you just, David's been on it. It's weird because David just got out of the hospital last month and had 3 heart attacks, believe it or not. And Paul, I know you just also got out of the hospital for a super infection, which I'm putting together for you a special pack, and I'll definitely call you about that. It's called a stat pack. And we use it for diseases and cancers. It's a very aggressive pack that has chlorine dioxide, DMSO, and of course the nano particulate blue, which has colloidal elements of silver, gold, and zinc in it, which is a really good, we nebulize it. You can drink it. We have a nasal spray, an ear spray, a throat spray. We also make a serum for the skin, for eczema, all other kinds of skin conditions. You guys can check that out at emerysmith.co. But for the most part, it replaces antibiotics, and we have some great white papers, which I'll share for you as well, Paul, about this. How are you feeling, Paul? You sound so much better. You look great.
Good. Yeah, I feel good. If you notice the library behind me,
yes,
many of these are medical books. I have had a strong interest in alternative medicine. I've been taking nano gold for 10 years on a regular basis, every day.
Excellent.
Every day for 10 years. And I've taken nano silver when I have an infection. Unfortunately, I didn't have any around during this recent bout, but I got over that, fortunately.
Good. Yeah, all my products have the nano zinc 0.02 nanometer. The thing is, you can get silver and gold online and stuff, but it's usually around 10 parts per million is the smallest. To make it nanized, I use very high voltage magnets and high voltage and very, very strong magnets. And I split the water, add extra hydrogen and electron to it to make it the 4 state of water plasma. So it forms covalent bonds around the nano zinc particles and silver and gold, which allows it to go through the blood-brain barrier and also into the DNA and correct the DNA and also destroy the DNA of viruses, parasites, and bacteria, which are usually responsible for your Lyme disease or cancer.
Yeah, I'd appreciate receiving some material on that so I could study it myself.
It's right up your alley, Paul. Yeah, David did a bunch of courses on it when he was here. We cleared David up. David's a walking plethora. He has his own biome that he's picked up from around the world of his journeys, I think. So, you hear? What was that, David? No.
Oh, we were talking about coronaviruses, how little they know about it.
Oh, the coronavirus. That's another one that this stuff works great with. We were able to eliminate coronavirus, Paul, with a radio frequency bath that we have developed. I'll also send you information about that. You'll like the technology. We do a lot of frequency healing.
I have two Rife machines. They weren't the original Rife machines, but they were built to replicate what Rife did, and a very big manual of frequencies to go with it. But I'm interested. This is still 15-year-old technology. I would be interested in what's going on in that field.
I would love to show you what we've done. We've taken the Rife frequencies, also a joint venture with Germany, Russia, and China, who's been collecting frequencies for hundreds of years, and I had put it into a program. So most Rife frequencies, around 40 to 80 frequencies he had started with. My system has the most frequencies out of all the new frequency nonlinear systems. I have over 880,000 frequencies logged into this program. So we can also do a long distance, nonlinear scan with your picture, because it measures the photons coming off your face. That's what I did with you when you were in the hospital. Victoria gave me a picture of you, and we were sending you some frequencies there, and I heard you did feel better the next day. I know you were definitely compromised.
Actually, I felt pretty good through the whole thing, quite frankly, even though
we were working.
The worst part of it was I ended up with C. diff, which is not so.
I know. My goodness.
That was not. It was. I still didn't feel that bad, but I was concerned because at my age, C. diff is a pretty dangerous disease.
Very dangerous. Yeah, that's over. Abuse of the antibiotics. There, too much antibiotics. You get C. diff, and the rest is Hershey squirts, as you know. But yeah, so what's interesting is the James Webb Telescope. They just announced, we can see light years into the past, and we can see these solar systems and planets and these e-planets, all these different things, and we know exactly if what kind of makeup of carbon and all these things it can read. And what's funny is they're releasing the technology of reading photons, and our system is a photon reader, so it reads the photons. Your photons are like a hard drive. It has all the atoms there that actually say exactly what's wrong with the body. So we have, perfected this process over the past 7 years with this system, which I want to make it available to the public. Hopefully in a couple of years when I get some manufacturing and some investors on board, so everyone can do their own self-diagnosis like a Rife machine and have it in their home, because it's very, very accurate. And like I said, and for those of you listening, we do nonlinear, scans, as Glenn knows and Victoria on here. And of course, David knows that. You can register at emerysmith.co. There's a little section there, or you can email me at cosmicmarket3@gmail.com. We can talk about, what you have going on, and because everyone's a little different. But we send in these radionic waves, scalar waves, and just like your viruses have their own frequency, we can go there and cancel that out. And we also have a destruct mode, so we can do a metatherapy mode where we're fixing the organs, but we can dive deeper. So let's say there's a spot on the liver, we go and find out in those tumor cells what caused those cells. We go into the DNA, we check out the RNA all the way down to your chromosomes, Paul. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty deep. So I think it's right up your alley. You're going to love it. And I'll definitely send you some information. And that's what we were doing behind the scenes when you were in the hospital.
Okay. Well, I thank you for that. I thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Well, everyone, we kind of reached our time limit here. I don't know if, Paul, you had any questions for David or me, or David, you had any more questions for us, but I want to thank both of you for taking the time out today and being here with us. And, it was a fantastic wealth of information. I think all of us learned something today, fellas.
I'm going to make a statue of Paul.
Well, we're talking about my favorite subject.
Yeah, it definitely shows. David said we're going to make a statue of you, Paul. I want to thank Darla and
Let me,
Darcy, the moderators.
let me prove my technology is in the market first.
Well, we believe in you so much. It's going to take a while. We'll start doing the statue now, and if something fails, then we'll just turn it into something else.
Now you're still a winner in my book.
Now you're a winner, he said in his book, and in my book as well. We're big fans of you. We've been following you here for 50 years, and it's just an honor to have you here on the show, and really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to thank Darla and Darcy here, the twins. Their birthday was yesterday, everyone. So wish them a happy birthday. Most of these shows couldn't happen without them. They're in the behind the scenes working on, getting everyone their links. And, we had a little bit of problem today. I'm glad we got on a little earlier. We had some audio video issues. David, we'll have to get with you and figure out what happened over there with your video. So I'm glad that David was still here with the audio. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. And until next time, you'll be hearing from me, Paul and David. And, hopefully we get to come out there pretty soon, Paul.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys.